Hello and welcome to the Soulful Mamas podcast. You're with your host Maria and you are so welcome here. Wow, so today I have got such a treat for you. I am interviewing a absolutely phenomenal, incredible, amazing, inspiring woman. Her name is Paula Schuster, and her journey from going into motherhood to now is quite big, quite huge, and talk about transformation. So for this one, I'm pretty sure you're probably going to want a cup of tea, perhaps, and you might want to be sitting down listening to this to really, if you're multitasking, which of course you can do if you need to, but you'll be wanting to sit sort of on the edge of your seat and keep listening. And so if you're busy cooking dinner at the same time, you might be burning something on the stove. It's really good. So there's so much each of you will gain from this. I certainly did. Many things you'll resonate with, and there is a lot. And I will put all of Paula's details in the show notes, where she was when she first became a mother. The world that she was in to the world that she's in now is so completely different. So back then, very much in corporate America, main income earner for her family, did everything. And now she quit her job in 2022 and had that desire to do more purposeful work. And she's then focused on the wellness business. So she's a certified life coach, certified sound healer, Reiki master teacher, and a podcaster. So yeah, I'll stop talking and you can start listening because it is really, really good. So without further ado, I welcome to you the beautiful Paula. Paula, welcome to the Soulful Mamas podcast. It's so good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me, Maria. I am so excited to be here.
Oh, yay. It's really, really great to have you here. And I was just saying before we recorded, you look so sparkly and vibrant, and the listeners can't see this, but hopefully they can. I know they're going to feel this because this is the energy that you have. So yeah, thank you. I was wondering if you could just start by sharing your entry into motherhood. What did that look like for you?
Sure, I'd love to. I just love what you're doing with this podcast, by the way. And I loved the story of your journey into motherhood. Like I was like on the edge of my seat the entire time. So I just had to tell you that. My journey into motherhood. Let's see, it started with my girl. And I was so happy to be pregnant because my former husband and I had waited for a long time. Like we were together for 9 years before we, sort of said, okay, we're ready to have kids. I kind of wanted to get to a certain point in my career. I was, in corporate America, and I was climbing the ladder, and I wanted to be at a certain financial place so that we were stable and things like that. And so we had waited a long time. And then when we said, okay, we're ready, then we got pregnant like right away. And I was glad it was so easy. And my pregnancy and the birth was just really easy. It was, just an easy road, really. I didn't have much morning sickness and all of that. I remember too, I left my office on a Friday for the weekend, and I knew that I was going to be going into labor. So I shut everything down as if I was not going to be coming back for a couple of months, and, brought my laptop home with me, knowing that I'd have to sort of sign on and notify everyone. And the next morning I went into labor, and or my water broke. And then I started going into labor, and I'm like, well, did my water break or did I just pee a little bit? I don't know. So I laid on the couch like the doctor had told me to do. And to figure out if it was my water broken, and it was. And it's kind of a cute story. My former husband freaked out. I'm the one having the baby and he freaks out. He was in the middle of break making breakfast and like eggs went everywhere and like, like, and I'm like, okay, I'll clean this up while you go take a shower, you know, and, and and then, we got to the hospital and I had an epidural because I wanted it to, at that time, I would do it differently now because I'm a different person. And so I wouldn't do that. I'd probably have a home birth if I was doing it now. But at the time, that's who I was and what I wanted. And so, I'm laying there watching TV, like nothing is, I'm not really feeling much. And, all of a sudden they check me and they say, okay, you're ready to start pushing. And I'm like, okay, great. you know? And so I'm pushing and I'm like, I would like a mirror. Can you put a mirror up for me? Because that would really like motivate me if I could see what's happening. So they got a mirror for me, which I thought was really cool. So I got to see my daughter be born. And I got to see her head crowning and all of that. And, when that was happening, I was like, yes, and I don't know, like once I started pushing, she was born within 45 minutes. And um yeah, it was just a really beautiful experience. And in terms of like motherhood, like once she was born, I just loved having a baby girl. It was just like everything in my world. I was the breadwinner. My former husband was the stay-at-home parent, and so I was the one going to work every day. And my job was very demanding, and that was okay because I had her to come home to. Like she was just the joy of my life. And we did everything together, like even if especially when she was a baby, like I had this baby Bjorn where, I put her in this thing that was in front, front of me so I could be hands-free. So I could be, doing anything, cleaning the house, doing laundry, and she was on me and with me with everything. And we would go shopping together all the time. Like just, we did everything together. And so that was pretty, uneventful. I mean, I just loved being a mom and I was ready for it. The only thing that was really hard was, going to work every day and leaving her and not, being that stay-at-home parent. Although I had always said I really didn't want to be a stay-at-home parent. I needed, sort of this, I needed a career. I needed this in my life to feel fulfilled. And, again, now if I had all of that to do all over again, I'd be choosing differently. I'd be choosing to be the stay-at-home parent. But I knew that, she was with her dad and that he loved her so much and that he was taking good care of her. And so all was well. And I'd like to kind of share my second pregnancy, because that's where sort of all of the unexpected things happened. Generally speaking, what I would say is going from 0 to 1 child was way easier than going from 1 to 2. Like my whole world shifted when I had 2 kids. It was like, oh my God, this is way more than I had anticipated,
Yep.
even though I loved being a mom. But like my second pregnancy was harder. I was sick all the time. It wasn't just in the first trimester. Like I was nauseous like the entire pregnancy. Like I literally walked around with a box of garlic Triscuits. Like even at my job, like I ran an office and a territory and I was, a big leader. And I went around from meeting to meeting with Triscuits in my hand because it was the only thing that would settle my stomach. So that was kind of funny. And I was very stressed at the time during my pregnancy, at work. There was a lot going on with my job. And my second child, my son, ended up being really premature. He came at 26 and a half weeks.
Wow.
And that was like my heart just started racing, just talking about it and thinking about it. That was quite an experience. It was like a shocker. And I get home from work one night, I'm on my drive home from work and I'm feeling cramps, and I'm going, like this, I couldn't possibly be in labor, like I'm only a little over halfway through here,
Yeah.
So I get home and they're getting worse. And, And it's this sort of this bearing down feeling that I didn't feel much of in my first pregnancy because I had gotten the epidural, right? So
Right.
I feel like I have to poop, right? And so I go into the bathroom and I'm sitting on the toilet and I feel like I have to go to the number two, and it's not coming and it's not coming. And I keep feeling this feeling. And my former husband comes in and he says, "Oh my God, you're in labor." He just looked at me and he could tell right away. He's like, "You're in labor. We have to call the doctor." So I said, "Okay, you think so? Okay, I'll call." And the pain was getting worse, and closer in between, the contractions is what they were. And I think literally he was crowning when I was on that toilet, I swear to God. But we called the doctor. The doctor's like, "Are you sure? You sure this is really?" And we're like, "Yes, you need to meet us there." So he agreed. And of course, my regular doctor wasn't available. And so it was like the youngest doctor in the practice. Like he looked like a baby. He looked like he was in his early 20s when he walked into the room I was in. And anyway, so they got me into triage or whatever it is, and had me in the gown, and they had my feet up in the stirrups, and he comes in and he just went. And for those who are, just listening, like he had this like shocked look on his face and sort of held his hands up and kind of stepped backward. Like, "Oh my God, oh my God," is kind of like the look he had on his face. And I'm like, "Oh, great." And so he's like, "Hang on just a minute. I'll be right back." And he went and got other doctors to consult with, and he got a neonatologist, and he came back and he said, "We need to start you on," I forget the name of the drug right now, but the drug to try to stop the what's the word?
Or labor.
Try to
Yeah.
Yes, try to stop the labor, try to stop him from coming.
Yeah.
And they're like pumping me full of this stuff, and it's not working, it's just not working. And they don't want to really give me anything to numb the pain because they need to know where I'm at in everything too, and where the baby's at. And and I'm asking for something from the pain. I mean, I remember hanging onto the sides of the hospital bed and my arms were literally shaking because I was in so much pain. And like, and so they got us in a room. The neonatologist came in and it felt like 45 minutes. I'm sure it probably wasn't that long, but it felt like forever. And he spent a long time telling us about all of the things that could be wrong with the baby coming this early. I mean, he went through all of the physical things, all of the developmental things, all of the details. And at one point I'm thinking to myself, like, why is he doing this? Like, it's very stressful. It's very stressful to be hearing about this right now, right? They ended up giving me a little bit for the pain, but it wasn't really much at all. And then they're like, "Okay, well, he's coming. We can't stop it. We can't keep trying to stop it anymore because he's coming and that's it." And then all of a sudden they checked his position and he had moved breech. And so I was planning on having a regular, vaginal birth, and that changed at the last minute too. They're like, "Okay, we got to get her in for a C-section." And like everybody's moving fast, like they were moving really fast. And they get me in, and they bring my husband in and they start like cutting me open. And I'm like, "Hey, I can feel this." I kind of raised my hand. And I'm like, "I can feel everything you're doing." And they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can feel every single thing." And they're like, "Okay, we have to change of plans. Husband, get out." And they're like, told the team, "We are moving at lightning speed. This has got to happen within like 30 seconds. Because they didn't want to put me under, because what if they gave me an anesthetic, then it would go directly to the baby. And they didn't want that because he was so young. And they had to do it anyway because I could feel everything. And so they gave me the anesthetic. I guess they let my husband come back in. I'm out, completely out. And I'm really glad that I was, because my husband told me that you probably would have freaked out if you would have seen how he came out, because my son came out limp and laying like he was dead, and he was gray in color. And that would have, like, it would have broken
Yeah.
my heart.
Yeah.
He wasn't breathing. And so they took him into the corner, and the neonatologist was there with a couple of nurses, and they were trying to get is it called a trach or something that they put in the throat to get you to breathe?
Yeah.
Well, so the nurses were trying, and the neonatologist, the head, doctor, was being patient with them because, he wants them to learn, and they couldn't get it and couldn't get it. My husband is telling me this after the fact. And finally he's like, okay, move out of the way, because there was no time left. They had to get him breathing. And so then he said, give me the smallest one that you've got. And he got it in right away on his first try. And Caleb, my son, kind of came to life, started breathing.
Wow.
And then it was like life and death for the first 48 hours. They didn't know if he was going to live. He was the youngest baby in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit. And they were surprised, like as this all unfolded, they're like, are you sure you were only 26 weeks? Because he was 2 pounds, 9 ounces. And that's a big baby, that's a big baby for 26 weeks. And there was only one time that we had sex and we got pregnant. And so it's like, there was no question about his age or his gestational age. And so, the first couple of days were like touch and go, like, they weren't sure if he was going to live. They wouldn't take him out of the incubator. Like, I couldn't hold him. I could only put my fingers in and just touch, no rubbing, because that's actually stressful for a baby that young. So it was just touch and then talking to him from outside of the incubator. And then beyond that, he started gaining enough strength for them to know that he would live. But he had, there was another long road. Like, we spent 73 days in the NICU, and I was there every day but one day. And I would just, they would let me hold him almost every day. And it would be like skin to skin. Like, I would take my shirt off and they would put him on me with all of his wires and tubes and everything. And I think it was called koala care. And that was like the best thing ever. And it's, helped him too. Like, it helped him grow and develop and survive having that contact with me. And I would just sing him nursery rhymes and sing other songs, like, for like 8 hours a day. Just sitting outside of his incubator and getting to know his nurses and doctors. And I, saw everything when they would call it, he's getting sick, when he would have bradycardiacs, where he would stop breathing. Like, the top of the incubator would be shot, they'd shoot that up, and they'd be working on, they'd lay him out flat, and they'd be working on him to get him to breathe again. Like, that was a very traumatic experience, and it was happening, fairly frequently. At one point he needed a blood transfusion, and he also needed a PDA ligation. PDA is like this, I don't want to call it an artery, but like or it's not a tube, but it's a connection. It's a connection between the heart and the lung that normally develops naturally. That wasn't developing naturally for him because he was so little and was born so early. And so they had to go in and connect that for him. And that happened when he was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks old. That surgery happened. And they had to do it because he kept getting sick, right? Like, he kept not breathing. And then once that PDA ligation happened and that was in place, then he, got sick a lot less often. He started being able to breathe better. And then was really on a good, strong road where he started gaining more weight and stuff like that. So that's,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow, I'm just sitting here also on the edge of my seat with tears in my eyes. I can just feel it through your words. I can, but what a gift, hey? He obviously really wanted to be here in that time, and
Yeah.
and he's clearly still here now, thriving. So when
Yeah.
how was that for you and your former husband and your daughter? I mean, that's such a big shift and change because it's not in the plan, so to speak. Going from your daughter and finishing work one day and the next day having a baby, you had a knowing that it was going to happen. It wasn't really the preparation time, but you could go straight into this mothering, and with your son, a completely different experience. And you've got a toddler as well. So
Yeah.
that in itself is huge because you're trying to manage your own processing and feelings. You're very vulnerable newborn, but you've also got your daughter who is too young to understand, and you're her person as well. Like, where is my mum?
Yep.
I guess fortunately your husband was the stay-at-home parent, so she was used to having him around a lot, because
Yes,
otherwise that could have been harder as well.
for
Wow.
sure.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I was really thankful for that. But she also, it was very hard for her because, when I got up and went to work in the morning, she was usually still sleeping. And so it was, sh and then every other time I left the house, she was with me. And so this all changed. Like when I got home from the hospital and then I was leaving every morning, it was usually a little bit later than when I used to leave for work. And so she would be up and seeing me leaving and she'd be like bawling her eyes out, "Mama, mama," and just the look of like, "Why are you leaving me?" I mean, she wasn't saying those words, but you could see it in her eyes. Like, "Why am I not coming with you?"
Yeah.
And it's because like she couldn't, like, there was no way they were letting toddlers in because they carry germs, right? And so like she could only come and see him in the hospital once he was closer to coming home. I mean, it must have been 50 days or 55 days in before they would even let her come into the NICU. Um, and so it was really,
Gosh.
really hard for her to see me leave, even though she was so used to being with her dad.
Yeah. Gosh, I can't even imagine how hard it would have been on each of you, all of
Yeah.
you. Yeah. And so how was that transition bringing your son home then? You're the responsible one.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. When he finally came home, though, it was like I had been begging the doctors to let him come home. And they're like, he needs to gain more weight. He needs to gain more weight. He needs to not have a bradycardiac for, days in a row, a week. And so like I was watching his weight, like I have everything written down in a calendar, like every single thing.
Yep.
Um, and they wanted him to be able to come home without monitors and without the beeping things, right? Because sometimes they send premature babies home with those things and sometimes they don't. If they can graduate to a certain place, then they don't have to come home with the monitors and the beeping things, and that's what they wanted for him. And so and then they also they had us come and stay in a room in the NICU. Like they have a couple of rooms for parents who are like ready to take their babies home so
Right.
that you could do it and be there with them on your own, but still have them around you. So we had done like kind of a test run. And so that made us more comfortable. But um, we were just so happy to have him home. Like it was just the best thing ever. I remember I had to take extra time off work because so much time had passed. I had my maternity leave and then I went back to work and then I took more time off. And so my work was really great and flexible about that. Um, but it was just, I remember just looking at him going, I can't wait, just like watching his cheeks get fatter and fatter and being
Yep.
so happy that he was gaining weight,
Yeah.
and just so happy that he was home, and that the rest just didn't even matter, and my daughter loved having a baby, a baby brother home, and we would all, she would come up, he would always be in my arms. and she would come up in my lap too. And it would be kind of the three of us while I was, again, home from work. But it was a much bigger challenge, going back to work and having to, especially like leaving him because, it was just different.
Yeah.
He had so much more going on, so I think it was harder for me to leave him and go to work than it was for me to go back to work with my first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That completely makes sense. Because I know over there your maternity leave is quite different, I think, to New Zealand. So, I mean, how old was your son when you did have to go back to work?
Oh, geez. Let's see, I think he came home. It was only like, I only had a few more weeks. It wasn't that
Wow.
long. It was only like 2 more weeks at home with him or something, or 3.
Mm,
And then that was it. And so I did have to go back. Um, yeah. And it just broke my heart. Like, and the other thing that broke my heart about him is that I couldn't breastfeed him
yeah.
because I tried and tried, but because he was so premature, he just wasn't, and so it was because he was so premature and he was fed out of a tube for so long that he didn't get that sucking kind of, right away. And so when I did try to put him on the breast, he just didn't, latch on. And that like broke my heart because that was one of the things that I craved, that I wanted. That was one of the reasons why, among many other reasons, but one of the reasons why I wanted to have another baby, because I just cherished that time, the feeding time so much.
Yeah.
And then here I was not even able to breastfeed him. So I was pumping a lot. And then I also, because of that, I wasn't, producing as much milk because it wasn't the baby on my breast. It was a pump. And so
Yeah.
that was sad, but we were still able to build up a good supply. Like we had to buy an extra freezer to hold it all because, he ate in such little bits in the beginning. He was so tiny
Yeah.
that he wasn't eating much, but
Wow. Gosh, Paula, it's huge. It's huge.
yeah.
Do you feel like, that feeling of wanting to go back, be a career woman and happy to go back to work after your daughter because there was that balance there. That how was there a shift after going back with your son? Or once you'd got yourself back into a routine, it was normal and okay again? Being back in their work environment and trying to balance the two. Did it come right, or was there a shift in you?
There was a shift in me, but at the time I didn't really recognize it for what it was, I guess. Like I can look back now and see what it was. But at the time, I just put one foot in front of the other and did what I had to do, right? And I was the one working, and I was the one in the relationship who always made more money, and there was no way he could get a job to support that would, support us at the current level or even anywhere near it. And so there was an element of I didn't have a choice,
Yeah.
And now I have gone through so much growth just in the last few years. I know I had a choice, but it certainly didn't feel like it at the time. And so it was much harder. I had a lot more going on at work at the time too. And I know, just as a quick sidebar, that stress is what caused that premature birth. And the doctors would never tell me that. They just said, oh, it's unexplained. And about 60% of premature births are unexplained. You didn't have any infection or anything like that where we could say that was what made it happen. And we all know what stress can do to our bodies, to our sleep, to our hair, to our complexion, to our guts, everything, right? I know deep inside me that it was the stress that I was experiencing and going through that is what made him be born early. But anyway, it was a lot harder going back to work. And then, we also knew that it was, there was a long road ahead, right? Because he was premature. So he was always going to be sort of about 2 years behind is what they were calculating.
Mhm.
And so there were developmental delays. And then he had a developmental pediatrician following him from the very beginning because he was premature. And so he was diagnosed with autism at 2.5. And I knew something was wrong with him too. Like we were coming up on one of those appointments. We had those appointments once every 3 months. And Caleb, he was about little over 2 years old, and he would play, on the floor by himself and he had some words and was talking. And then all of a sudden, one day he just stopped talking. And he was sitting on the couch, kind of rocking and stuff like that a lot. And I'm like, my kid has changed. Something's wrong with him. Maybe we should move that I was thinking maybe we should move that appointment up with the developmental pediatrician. And then I'm like, well, it's in a couple months. We'll just keep the appointment and wait. And I wish I wouldn't have waited. I wish I would have listened to my intuition and gotten in sooner. But anyway, he was diagnosed with autism at that next appointment. And, because he had gone from having words to no words and all this. And so that ended up, putting an extra layer of so much on what was already happening in our lives, right? Like we were already busy because we had 2 kids and I was working a lot and then now all of a sudden he needed all of these therapies and all of this attention. And that was fine. I wanted to do it all, but it was just a lot. And I was the manager of all of the therapies and therapists, not the stay-at-home parent. So that's a whole story in and of itself. But, like he had physical therapy and occupational therapy and speech therapy, and he had, other behavioral therapies and things. And we had a habilitator who was in our house 5 days of working with him, who actually, sort of really became part of our family. And I was the one making sure all of them had each other's information and, doing all of the work to find them in the beginning or finding the right one when one didn't work and all of that. And so that was a part-time job in and of itself. And so I was working a very demanding more than full-time job, and then managing all of that on top of it and trying to also then be present with my kids. And it was too much for one person to handle.
Absolutely. When it's not sustainable at all. But at what point was that apparent or really evident that this isn't working or something was there that feeling, that build up of like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore? Did that happen?
It did, but all I kept thinking was, this is my baby. I have to do it. Like there's there's no other choice. Like I'm not, if anything, I'd be, doing less or giving up part of my career, the career job, not my mom job. Because that I felt really torn too, because here I am, the one supporting the family financially completely. It's all on my shoulders. And I didn't want to do less for my child either. And so I just slept less and worked longer days and burned the candle at both ends and kept putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's the story of so many mothers, isn't it? It's exactly that, one foot in front of the other, and you just keep going. And it's not until you have an experience or you meet a person that shifts your perspective, or otherwise you don't know any different. You just keep going, and environment and situations not changing, we're not changing, so we just keep continuing. But did you find that you had any support? Sounds like you had lots of support in terms of medical, like different therapists and different things for particularly Caleb, but For you yourself, was there like, friends or family? Did anyone, or is it you holding yourself, I'm okay, I've got it sorted, I can do it all, that super mom type thing? On the outside looking in, it looked like you had it all together and you're okay. Sort
Yeah,
of thing.
probably the latter
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
You know, we had moved, so I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota in the US, and my job had brought us out to Arizona. So both the kids were born in Arizona. And so we were without family. I mean, we were without family other than my husband's mother. And so she had lived not too far away from us, just like a few blocks actually. And so, it was very nice to have her help. But in the beginning, when Caleb was first born, her and I had kind of a falling out. And so for a while it got, you know, bad, because we weren't speaking. And then we ended up, coming together again and getting past that. And so then, it was a huge help to have her. And then the rest, like I would talk to my family and like my mom and my sister, whom I leaned on a lot, but it was just over the phone, like they weren't there in person to help. And I was working so much and doing so much, like I didn't have friends, I didn't have time to meet people. And that didn't even happen until the kids started to get into school. And then I was trying to meet other mothers and stuff, but I felt very, very isolated. I, had friends at work, but it's not the same sometimes, um, and so, and where I worked, there wasn't a lot of time for small talk and stuff. It was like, we're down to business, 58 minutes out of the 60 minutes in each hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I did feel very isolated, and unfortunately it came out in ways, like I had that stress, stuff came out in ways like I wasn't as patient as I wanted to be as a mom. Um, and yeah, I did feel really isolated because I was close to my mother-in-law, but not that close,
Yeah.
where I could tell her my most inner feelings and stuff,
That's right. And you also mentioned your former husband, which indicates at some point you separated with your husband, so that would have been another stressful um, hurdle in itself as well, navigating that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He was the stay-at-home parent, but he wasn't doing everything, right? Like, we even had a cleaning lady, like I was doing the laundry on the weekends. He was cooking and taking care of the kids and driving Caleb around to all of his therapies and stuff, but he wasn't helping manage the therapies or the therapists and making sure they had all the information. He left all that to me, and then our relationship had already been suffering before Caleb was born. And then it just, got progressively worse and worse and worse. And and I knew, so I tried everything I could to make that work because I thought marriage was forever, right? Like I wanted it to be forever. And and I knew that I wanted to try everything in my power before divorcing so that I could never look back and say, well, what if I would have done this or that? I wonder if it would have turned out different, or had any guilt or blame for myself. So I tried everything, talking with him, and he wouldn't go to therapy, or he wouldn't, there was just no intimacy in our relationship, and not sexually, not communicatively, not emotionally. And, it got to a point when he started drinking again. He had been sober for 15 years and he started drinking again. And that's when it got really bad. And Caleb, was getting older. he was getting older, and I knew that I wanted to move back to Minnesota to be home. But I also knew that when we moved back, that Caleb's therapies would be based on and what we had to pay out for them would be based on my income. Everything was free where we were in Arizona because he was on state Medicaid. That's how they dealt with kids with autism in Arizona. And so, I'm just so grateful we were there when he was born, because we had everything we needed and it didn't cost us anything. So I knew I needed Caleb to get to a certain point in his development before I would pull the trigger on leaving Arizona and moving back home. And then knowing that's where I needed to be to divorce my husband, because that's where my support system was.
Yeah.
And, but when he had started drinking again, it got really bad. Like I would come home from work and I would say, well, how did speech therapy go today? Or something like that. And literally he would yell at me and he would lash out like, don't you think I can, handle this? And like, I'd just be asking how it went, and so, then that was just then another added thing, right? Like to the stress and the everything that was already happening. And so it was a lot. It was a lot. And I was drinking too, I was drinking quite a bit. Not to the point where, like the kids would never see me drunk. I never allowed that. And I really didn't get like falling down drunk. I just drank, to take the edge off and that. They didn't see me getting, really drunk until they were older. But I still wasn't like a mom who was like passed out in the chair. I would get a good buzz and be happy, and that was about all they saw. But
Yeah. Yeah. Because there has to be something, isn't it? Some outlet, some release or escape or whatever you want to call it. Whether it's through, if it's alcohol or drugs or gaming or whatever it is, or if there isn't that support there where you can have that actual physical conversation and be held and shown another way, and just know that you're not alone. And you're really not alone. This is your story is it's big, but a lot of people have big stories as well. And until those conversations happen, you just don't know, and you just get on with it and do it, and you just find whatever it is that gets you through. And that's what it is for many mums. And that's why I love having these conversations with these so many beautiful mamas, because everyone's got a story, and you find out that the theme already in these early days is that we just soldier on and you've got to get it done. And it's not, you're on a different path now. I'm on a different path now, but you don't know what you don't know in the beginning. And
for sure.
that's sort of my mission, is to try and support mums earlier, if that there is that village, if you like, if they're ready to be wrapped up and held in that space. But
I love that. I wish I would have had, I didn't even know back then what it meant to have a conversation where you're held, like I know what that's like now, but then like I didn't even know what that was. And I don't even know, honestly, if I would have been receptive to it, it would have felt so uncomfortable to me because of, just how my whole life had rolled out to that point. And so I just, I thought everybody just raised their kids on their own and that's how it was done. I mean, now, if I had it to do all over, I would be using my whole village, and I would be cultivating those kinds of relationships with, other women and in the community that I lived in and all of that stuff. I see the beauty in that now. I had no idea that was even a thing or that it was acceptable or, all of that back then.
Yeah, no, I get it. the same. And I think many are. And to a point, you have to go through different experiences to fully have that awareness, and that you
Yeah.
grow from that, because the work that you do now, you are fully authentic, and you have had every experience almost, so you can truly um, hold space for another person and say, yep, I get it. And you're living proof that you're just like this shining light, and there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it just depends on how far along you get before you put your hand up and say, I need a bit of help here. Anything else? I need another option. Yeah. Yeah. I am mindful of your time, Paula, but do you want to quickly tell us about where you're at now, and maybe a little bit about your podcast, because this is one aspect of your journey, but you've got others. So it'd be great for the listeners to find you and listen to other parts of your story as well, and piece it all together.
Yeah,
um,
sure. Thank you.
yeah.
Well, I ended up quitting that corporate job in May of
Yay!
2022, right? Because it was sucking the soul out of me, and I really needed to do something more purposeful with my life. And so now I'm a self-love and authenticity coach, and I'm a sound healer and a Reiki master, and a podcaster.
Yay!
Yeah. And my kids are 16 and 18, and I'm showing them, all of the different all of the changes that you can make in life, right? Like how you don't have to stay on the same path, and no matter what age you are, you can change. Because I didn't make some of these changes in my life till I was 50, and
Yeah.
so it's never too late. And I'm so grateful that I get the opportunity to teach them differently, than what they had seen me do for so long, running myself ragged and all of that. And how you can have a much more purposeful life serving people around you, than working for a corporation and their profits. But anyway,
Yeah,
um,
no, beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah.
And my podcast, can I say the whole name, or should I?
Yes, say the whole name. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
My
Yep, prefer
podcast
it.
is called Scared as Fuck and Doing It Anyway, Showing Up Authentically. And that was born out of me being scared to start a podcast. I knew I wanted to do it about authenticity, because that's been my journey over the last few years, and it really resonates with me. And I know that there's so many people walking on this earth who aren't living authentically. And that's where I want to like provide help and support. And I had a name picked out, and it didn't feel right for me. It was a little boring for my feistier personality, I guess. And I was sitting at my desk one day crying because I hadn't made progress with my podcast. And I'm like, I'm just so fucking scared to do this. And I'm like, oh, maybe that's it. So that's how the name
Yep.
was born.
That's
And
awesome.
thank you. And I'm loving it. This whole podcasting journey has been so expansive, and I just feel just lighter and brighter and happier than I've ever been, to be honest.
Yeah, I completely can agree. Well, one for you, I can see you literally are radiating the light and the love. It's so beautiful. I almost need to put this on video, but I'm not going to. Um, but I know I feel the same way. It's so empowering, and just having these conversations is so needed. Um, and I think also in the busy world that we're in, of busyness that we somehow create and escalates, reading, I used to write a lot more, but now I find people even don't have time to read. Like, if you send an email, but listening to another person's voice or a conversation that resonates, it's different. And if you need to, you can still be busy multitasking or doing the dishes or driving. You can still listen. And so therefore the little seeds can be planted, or those connections made in another way through podcasting. And it's so good, just these amazing conversations. So
I
yeah,
agree.
it's yeah, yay.
I'm very much, I've been over the last few years seeking all this connection and community, and I really feel like I'm getting that through the podcasting, right? A lot of it anyway. I love the connection. I want to make more connections with people and like lock arms and do things together and support each other.
Yeah. Oh, goosebumps. Yes, totally. Exactly. I feel the same way. Oh, Paula. Um, Before you go though, do you want to tell us what do you do for yourself to keep your soul full? What's the soul filling things that you do for you?
Well, so right off the bat, I'll say following my heart's desires because I didn't do that for all of my life, really, or for a huge, huge part of my life. And that is fulfilling, and my wife has said lately, because even when she met me, we've been together 7 years. And, I had that corporate job for, and did the same thing for so long. And then now I'm off doing all these things. Right. And so she says it's like being strapped to a rocket, like, because I'm all over the place, just doing kind of what I want. I'm like, well, I'm just following my heart's desires. And so that's one thing. And then kind of what keeps me, I don't know, peaceful from the inside out, and really, really helps me is meditating every morning. That's a practice I do not give up. I have to meditate every day, so that helps fill my soul. And then connections, like making connections with people like you, Maria, women like you, and some of the other women that I've met through this whole journey, like it just fills me up. Oh, the other thing that I did is I created a sacred sisterhood circle, and that is
Ooh.
filling me up big time. I love it so much. It's just this little community that I've started, and I hope it grows.
Yay. It will. Of course it will, because it's your energy that you put into it. It's just magic. So magic. I will add all of your like social links and whatnot and your podcast details into the show notes so the listeners can find you and learn more about you and delve into your beautiful world.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. I really, really appreciate your time, and oh, what a journey. It's almost like to be continued, but I
Right.
appreciate you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Maria, for having me. Love you.
Wow. Isn't Paula just incredible? She is truly, truly inspirational, and her story, I mean, I know Paula and her story, but even part of that, I didn't know the depth of it. She's amazing. These are the takeaways. There are many, and you'll have your own from the podcast, from the episode, but this is what I've got. Number 1, no 2 pregnancies and births are the same. And navigating 2 children from one is a really big shift. Number 2, stress really does impact us more than we realize, particularly in pregnancy and in birth. Number 3, burning the candle at both ends often feels like the only option, but it truly isn't sustainable. Number 4, how incredibly real the feeling of being isolated and alone is when we don't have any support nearby. Number 5, recognizing when something is sucking the soul out of you and then acting on it. It is never too late to make changes, regardless of your age and stage. Number 6, you can have a much more purposeful life and serve those around you when you choose to live authentically. Number 7, seeking connection and community and support and uplifting one another is so incredibly necessary. And number 8, We all feel scared when we start new things, but we need to be brave and do it anyway. And that leads me to Paula's podcast that she has, and she spoke about it briefly. It's called Scared as Fuck and Doing It Anyway. And it's basically exactly what she's just shared. And what I've just summed up there, she is brave. She's courageous. She's in her 50s and she has completely changed her life and made her path is completely different. And I can imagine that new mother, when Paula first had her children when they're young, wouldn't recognize the person that she is now. They're just very, very different. But the key is there, and she did mention it a little bit, in amongst all of what was going on, there was that little voice inside her. There was that intuition trying really hard to be heard. And it was when Paula listened to it and acted on it, that's when those little shifts happened and changes could be made. And wow, look where she is now. So I'm really grateful to Paula for her time and being really generous in her sharing. Please go and listen to her podcast. It's so, so good. And you'll learn more about her journey and her life story. Really, really good. And her other details where you can find her on socials and email, etc., will be in the show notes. So thank you all for listening. I truly appreciate your time. And if you feel like this episode will resonate with somebody else or be helpful to somebody else, because there's a lot in it, please do share it. Send them the link or tag me in and I can share it. Or it's really helpful for mums who are just like how Paula was, feeling very alone and had to do it on her own, particularly given the situation she was in. So I know she'd be super happy if this could even just help one person. So if you know that one person, please do share. And in the meantime, have a beautiful, soul-filling day. I'll see you again soon.